As always, thank you guys so much to Whisper Nation for joining.
Hello.
And, hello.
Oh,
How are you?
My head's cut off. Oh, good. No one has to see my giant forehead.
Oh.
I don't know, but I do have a giant. That's why I normally wear my hair up all the time. But when I wear it up, and for some reason on camera, my forehead looks like the state of Montana. It's gigantic.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say.
I usually have to wear my hair down a little bit. Like
you keep saying, you keep telling Travis and Whisper Nation you like to wear your hair up, yet I have not seen it one time. So
I know.
I'm a little doubting that.
One of these days, I just don't want to scare the audience with like the shiny surface area of my ginormous forehead.
Hey,
which is funny because I have a really small head. Like if you compare my dome to other people, it's actually quite minuscule. But my forehead just makes up for all that surface area. It's like, hey, I got you. Don't worry about it. So my mom made me have bangs until I was like 14. Because it's like, no, cover that up, girl. Cover that up. Mm-mm.
Oh, well, it's good to have you here. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. We have a great show planned today. I want to take a second really quick and thank everybody who's joining us right here on our live stream. I am talking with stepmom Lauren. We're going over early top 10 quarterback rankings right now. And stepmom Lauren's going to break those down, and I'm just going to kind of feed off of her energy and go with it. All right? She has been all over the place. And so to get her tied down for 30 minutes on the Fantasy Whispers, we are so grateful.
So you're too sweet. I am always available to hang out with you guys. You know I love you. This is my baby. I love being here, and I love the Whisper Nation. So thank you again for having me back. I am honored to be here.
Well, we appreciate you. Please let people know now where they can find you.
You can find me everywhere. So social media platforms.
Literally.
Twitter. Literally. It is kind of weird, right? Like I could do a dissertation about this right now. But so Twitter, Stepmom Lauren, Instagram, Stepmom Lauren, Facebook.com/Stepmom Lauren. You can also find me on YouTube if you search the channel Stepmom Lauren. I don't have enough followers for my own unique URL yet. But I'm also a little new to YouTube, so maybe I'm just doing something wrong. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Whatever. Just go like it. Go subscribe, like and subscribe. You can make fun of me if you want. I don't care. I am not a delicate lotus blossom, so if you have things you want to say, bring it on. I'm good.
Maybe. She is great on the responses and quick-witted as well. So
Thank you.
And then, as always, please like and subscribe to the Fantasy Whispers. You can find us on all social media platforms, as well as big announcement. We are finally on Spotify. So you can now get us on Spotify. Yes, I was just as equally as excited. So please go download and subscribe to the podcast. All right.
So exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we were really excited. All right, so let's jump in. Now, we'll ease on in. All right, these first couple ones are pretty obvious, but we still like to go over them anyway for the newbies that are joining for us. So we'll start. Well, do you want to go with number 10? Do you want to do a countdown, or do you want to start off with the top? I think we all kind of know the top as opposed to the bottom. So when it comes to quarterback rankings, I kind of like to go starting from the top, but you are our guest, so I will go with whatever you would like to go with.
You know what? I really like your style, Johnny. I really like your style. Why don't we go from the bottom to the top? Because literally who ends up at number 6 is going to be a little mind-blowing, because that's what it was for me. So we can hop right into that. And before we do that, though, I do want to mention, so this is an article that I wrote for the Fantasy Footballers. It should be coming out within the next day or so, and it's based off of their most recent podcast that just dropped on Tuesday. If you have not had a chance to do so, please follow the Fantasy Footballers. They have a special UDK. It's called the Ultimate Draft Kit that's out right now. It is absolutely amazing. I've used it for the past 3 years, and it is unbelievable. Really go and do it. And these are their rankings that they put into the podcast. And some of them were a little surprising for me, where certain people fell and then where certain people actually ended up in the rankings. But this is not all my research. I have a sprinkling of information here and there, but this is all theirs. So this is kind of a recap of their genius that they put into this. Another real quick thing, too, is that Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers in this podcast also mentioned that the quarterback class is really tightening up. Their scoring has skyrocketed since 2017, which is great. And there's only in, I think, 6-point scoring, I think is what he said. In the 6-point scoring, there's less than a 1-point differential between, I think, QB8 and QB14, which was Drew Brees and Cam Newton. So just keep that in mind as we're going through these rankings. Just to keep that in mind, that it's very tight. This is a very tight class of quarterbacks that we're talking about going into 2019.
Yeah, and, as you start to look at it, as you become kind of more familiar with the landscape and the numbers that are revolving around these quarterbacks, especially if you're in like a 4-point per passing touchdown league, even more so, like wait on your quarterbacks, because you can literally just stream along the position. And I mean, the number one person, little whisper, secret there, guess what? You picked him up off your waiver last year, so it is wise to wait on quarterbacks. But I want to get into this, Lauren. I want to start talking specifics. So let's jump in here with number 10. All right, we're going to start off with number 10, and this blows my mind because just a few years ago, this guy was, bar none, it was two guys on the list. All right, he was number 1 or number 2 in some cases, and that is Drew Brees from the New Orleans Saints. This guy, everyone thought he was, done. Everyone thought age was finally taking him. And he said, you know what? Nope, I'm going to get back out there, and I'm going to show you exactly what I can do. Drew Brees lit it up last year. He was the he was the number 1 most efficient quarterback in the red zone. Out of all the quarterbacks, that's Pat Mahomes, that's Andrew Luck, all of them, he was the most efficient in the red zone. Lauren, he had, let me pull up my stats here really quick. He had 438 yards, 26 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He was 76 for 109 in the red zone. That's something that you really, really like. But I know you're going to break down Drew Brees a little bit more, so I'll pass on over the mic to you.
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up, is inside the red zone, he had 0 interceptions. Well, he had a league low of only 5 interceptions for the entire season. That is unbelievable. And he had 32 passing touchdowns. I get it. So why is he so low in our quarterback rankings, right, on that top 10? He is still in the top 10. He has to be. He's Drew Brees. But, why is he so low? Well, for the last 4 weeks of the regular season, he was actually a quarterback 24. There's also other factors you can contribute going into that. They had Taysom Hill coming in, taking those weird, wildcat snaps, doing whatever. They were trying to get a little persnickety, and I get it. They were focusing on Mark Ingram and doing some of a run game. I understand where the arguments can come into that, and he is a year older. But this is what's really interesting. So he had a career-high pass completion percentage at 74.4, but he had the fewest passes at 600 pass completions. 364 since 2009. And he also had the fewest passing yards at 3,992 since 2005. Okay, it's not the Drew Brees of old that we're used to.
Right.
But even so, he is Drew Brees, and he does what he does. So even if he's getting a year older, even if they want to focus a little bit maybe more in the run game, I don't know if they want to do that this year because Ingram's gone, and it's going to be pass catch happy Kamara, who I love. So that's why he's up there.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Kamara, right? So Mark Ingram suspended the very first 4 weeks of the season. You look at Drew Brees' week by week. He placed second week 1, 14th on week 2, number 1 on week 3, and 26th on or I don't know if that's right. So I got to fact check that. But what I'm making out here is that he does throw the ball more when they didn't have Mark Ingram.
Yeah.
I do have my concerns, and I think that's why Drew Brees has dropped down a little bit, is because of Hill. Hill is being used more as, just near the red zone, and it's even as just a football fan, a fantasy fan, unless I was playing Drew Brees, I was even getting frustrated for Drew Brees the owners, because I'm like, put Drew Brees in. They got him there. Why are you putting him in?
My best friend has picked Drew Brees because in my league that we play in our home league, we have such a high scoring quarterback. And I'm not talking about simply 6 points. I'm talking about so many freaky bonuses. It's insane. Yeah. So unless you have, like, quarterbacks go first off the board in our league, no matter what, because our quarterbacks can score upwards of 100 points. So Drew Brees is first off the board for this one guy. And last year, he's like, what is happening? Who is this Hill person? Why is this happening to my life? And I'm like, well, I don't know. But he wasn't my quarterback, so I didn't really get that upset about it. But it was kind of like, what are you doing? But it was smart what the Saints were trying to do from regular football. Not for fantasy, though, and especially not for Drew Brees owners. That could have been a little, like, heartburn. I need my Metamucil and some Maalox to make myself feel better.
All right, so I want to catch up on some comments here from Whisper Nation. So we have a couple of really good ones. So Sports Outliers, they said Max Unger retired. So the center does matter. That's an absolutely true statement. Ask Peyton Manning how much a center matters. So that was a great point there. And then Big Travie, Sean Payton has been a genius at catering the offense to an aging Brees, dump offs to Kamara, and shorter possession throws to Michael Thomas, which is true.
He makes a very valid point. He makes a very valid point because one of the things that Drew Brees did lack this year was his deep threats. So that actually hurt Michael Thomas as well in his wide receiver numbers because he caught way fewer long receptions as opposed to those short ones. However, they are really good at working in the scheme and making sure those receptions happen. Continue. I interrupted. My bad.
Oh, you're good? No. All right, so let's jump on into quarterback number 9. And number 9 is always a fan favorite. And I want to stand here and say that this is a proud moment. Because if you go back, now that we have a podcast and things, I'm going to do a little humble brag here.
Oh, do it.
Last year, I really liked Russell Wilson. That is our number 9 quarterback right now. And you're going to say, Russell Wilson, number 9 quarterback, are you crazy? Well, first, let me just ease you in here with saying that last year, a lot of people were taking Russell Wilson either as the second or the third quarterback off the board, and which I didn't necessarily disagree with. I thought that the numbers were there. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem with Russell Wilson, and I will continue to beat this drum until he proves me wrong, and last year he did not. He always, and I repeat, always starts the season off very slow. You will find him on the waiver wire probably within 4 weeks of the season because his fantasy owners are disappointed. But that's when you pick him up, and that's when he starts getting it going. It's like he likes to arrive late to the party, and once he shows up, it's a good time, but until he does that, you might be scratching your head for some wins. Now, there are some concerns as well on top of those ones saying that he starts off slow. He also has a really, run-oriented offensive coordinator that just wants to run, and then even when you think he's going to run, he likes to run it again. And so that's my biggest concern with Russell Wilson. But Stepmom Lauren, I want to know what your biggest concerns are with Russell Wilson. Are you willing to wait till the end of drafts and maybe take a Russell Wilson with another pairing of like Jared Goff or something like that in order to get you by those first 4 weeks? Or are you just saying, you know what, I'm not even touching Russell Wilson this year?
I love Russell Wilson, and there's nothing more that I love about Russell Wilson than the fact that he still is in the top 10 as number 9, even though he did not run the football like we are used to seeing him doing, but yet he still had the production that you needed. I had Russell Wilson in a couple leagues as my quarterback, and there were some weeks I knew that drafting him that he's a slow starter in the beginning of the league. You know that. So then you have to have a draft strategy set in place where you can get a late round quarterback that's going to have some value in those first 4 weeks, or you stream the position until he catches on fire. He's like the October baby. That's what he does. He kind of lights up when that happens. So last year, this is what is so interesting about Russell Wilson, is that even though he had the fewest rushing attempts in his career, so in 2017, pardon me, he had 95 attempts for 586 yards and 3 touchdowns. Last year, he only had 67 attempts for 376 yards and no touchdowns. That's not the Russell Wilson we're used to seeing. So even though this offense was so run heavy, they did it without Russell Wilson, which was really weird because he's a really good running quarterback. I don't understand. So part of me is like, I don't think that's going to continue. I think because especially paying him as much money as they have paid him, they have to utilize his talents.
Overnight.
He is such a talented quarterback on all aspects of his pass game, on his run game, on his scramble. He can do all of these things. So I would be really surprised if those rushing numbers from Russell Wilson stay as low as that. That doesn't make much sense to me. However, he did have an 8.2% touchdown rate. To give you a little bit of context, Pat Mahomes, my boo, Pat, we're like besties. That's why I call him Pat. I don't really need to call him Pat.
Rolling with the homies.
Yeah. Pat Mahomes. He had Pat Mahomes. Oh, I love it. I can't with my life. So Russell Wilson was at 8.2% touchdown rate, and Patrick Mahomes was at 8.6%. So when you look at those kind of numbers, it's very odd when you're looking at this. And I don't know. Like, that's why he's still in the top 10, but he's a little bit lower because the offense has some weird strategy that it's doing right now. But when you have that kind of a franchise quarterback, you're paying him that kind of money, and he has this kind of talent, I don't see I guess even a regression from his running. I see an uptick in production because they have Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. So the highest paid quarterback is going to be passing the ball off to Rashad Penny.
Yeah.
That doesn't make much sense to me. So I don't know. I think the offense is going to kind of work and tweak from what it learned from 2018 moving into 2019. I still love Russell Wilson, and I'm glad that he's this low on the rankings because his ADP could continue to be a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing Russell Wilson at, and that's totally fine with me because I have no problem picking him up in later rounds.
All right. So we have a couple of Big Travis saying Russell Wilson is fool's gold. We got Austin Sear saying high ceiling, subterranean. Oh my gosh, I cannot. Yes, thank you.
I got you.
I was totally fine when I was reading the comments, and then I just try to speak out loud, and I can't speak all of a sudden. So definitely a lot of coincide. A lot of argument.
Sports Outliers brings up a really good point because Seattle's O-line does need a lot of work. And that is an absolutely
which is why it's so miraculous that they were able to run so well.
Well, I know, and that's one of the reasons why Russell Wilson scrambled so much, and he was kind of forced to pass the ball. So let's see what kind of decisions they make in this offseason moving forward. Obviously, these are early QB rankings, so these can definitely change, but that's a very good point that their O-line needs some work.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to jump into quarterback number 8 here. And this guy is exciting because I will say we did not get more flack from people than last year when we rated this quarterback so low. And so coming into the season, number 8, we have Matt Ryan, and we're probably going to get a ton of messages on our live stream right now. Because people are going to be like, the number 2 quarterback of last year, you have at number 8. And as we keep revealing these names, you're going to be like, it kind of makes sense. I am definitely not on the Matt Ryan bandwagon. I will say a big part of this, I have no shame. A big part of this is because he burned me so badly 2 years ago when he was the number 1 quarterback the next year. I was so excited. I was like, oh, Matt Ryan, here he comes, Matty Ice. And he came out, and he was awful. And then, so I was like, never touching him. Ranked him low last year. Everyone got on us. Whisper Nation kept tweeting at us. And I was like, I really can't move him up. But then at the end of the year,
is like, I hate Matt Ryan. I feel your pain, bro.
yes,
I feel your pain.
Yep. It is such a frustrating thing. But Matt Ryan, he's a good quarterback. He is a solid quarterback. My concern with Matt Ryan coming into this next year is they will have 3 men back. And they didn't really have a very good running game last year. They had Tevin Coleman, but he was like hit or miss. He was up and down. They had Ito Smith, who, let's face it, he was nothing spectacular like they thought he was going to be. He kind of disappointed. So he had to throw a little bit more. Don't get me wrong. His wide receiver weapons are fabulous. I love them. Julio Jones, he finally got into the end zone. You had a rookie who actually like popped off and now is going to be, a lot of people think is going to be really, really good. And so what do you think is Matt Ryan's upside? What do you think his floor is? Do you think this ranking is about accurate, or where do you have him in your personal rankings?
I have him higher.
You do have him higher.
I have him higher. I'm sorry.
I'm interested to this debate.
So my personal thing about Matt Ryan, because all these fantasy owners know, like, it is a hit or miss when it comes to Matt Ryan. He's either your QB1 and you're like, oh, thank you, sweet baby Jesus, that I got him on the right year. Or you're like, why did I spend so much draft capital getting this guy? And then he does nothing for me. Like, what is going on? But the biggest thing for me, and I do this a lot, I tend to look at coaching changes, because for me, that really describes the environment that these players are going to be in. And if the environment isn't right, their production on the football field is going to suffer, which then in turn, fantasy points suffer. He has Dirk Cutter back. That is huge for me. And I understand a lot of people are like, oh, Tampa Bay, Dirk Cutter. I understand that. But he and Matt Ryan have such a great rapport together. It's unbelievable. And in fact, last year, weeks 2 through 10, he averaged the same amount of fantasy points per game as Pat Mahomes. Now, that was under Steve Sarkisian, who this is his second year under him, and he finally had a bounce-back year. Right. Although you could look at it on the flip side and be like, if Matt Ryan's going to like yo-yo every single year, the next year he's going to suck. I don't know. Yeah. But the environment there for him is really good, because under Dirk Cutter, when he was with the Falcons, because he used to be their offensive coordinator with the Falcons back between 2012 and 2014. So over those 3 years, they averaged 363.5 yards, and 277.2 of those were passing yards. And I know you brought up the idea of Devonta Freeman being back. I only think that helps him, because having that stud running back, as long as he stays healthy, that allows Matt Ryan to stretch the field out. And I think this is going to be a recipe for him to really succeed. And he has the talent, he has the accuracy to get it done. And he has now the environment around him, because wasn't the narrative when Steve Sarkisian came in that he just kind of made a scrapbook of the play calling? Because he asked Matt Ryan, like, what are your favorite calls? What are your favorite plays? Let's put them all together. Let's scrapbook and have coffee and, hang out at Starbucks.
Down the entire thing.
Yeah, it did. And it didn't work for him. But he has a really good rapport with Dirk Cutter, and they have had history. And I think in 2014, they went to the NFC Championship game. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about, which is exactly what Jacksonville did, bringing John DeFilippo. I called him Ryan in Rank's podcast because I know a guy named Ryan DeFilippo, so I apologize. Y'all can make fun of me. That's totally fine. But they brought John DeFilippo to Jacksonville because they have Nick Foles and they won a Super Bowl together. So I get that. There's that chemistry there, and I don't think that's going to go away. And I think it's gonna bolster him, especially if Devonta Freeman can stay healthy, which is why he's here.
And like I said, his draft value right now, especially because quarterbacks don't – it gets – I'm okay with it with him, right?
So his ADP right now is at 702. So if you can get Matt Ryan in the 7th round – really?
And you have that potential. And guess what? If it doesn't pan out, there's a whole bunch of guys on the waiver wire that you can certainly stream week to week, and we will help you with that right here on the Fantasy Whispers. But like you said, that's why it doesn't – I don't mind it as much as whereas last year you were kind of the previous year you were kind of paying up for that production.
Yeah, you were.
So
you're reaching for sure.
So this next quarterback we're going to talk about, quarterback number 7 on our board, Cam Newton, who is coming off of a shoulder injury. Now, Cam Newton was a monster quarterback to start off the season. And I want to recall that Cam Newton, whenever he finishes a season, he is a top 5 quarterback. Now, that's a big if he finishes the season, because he's only done so twice, I believe, in his career. But when he plays...
Only twice?
Yeah, he's played all 16 games. Yeah, that's correct.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There is concern. Now, again, just like Matt Ryan, we talked about in previous years, Cam Newton was coming off the board way later than he is this year. Cam Newton was, on average, the second quarterback taken off the board last year, right after Aaron Rodgers and before Deshaun Watson. And so, for me, I like Cam Newton if I can see the shoulder is okay. The concern here is he pretty much had like the same thing that Andrew Luck had. And Andrew Luck sat out a whole year. So
Exactly.
you also see the regression in his running. So that's another concern, as well as CMC has really supplanted and been like, no, I'm taking all those carries and everything like that. So for me, I do have my concerns about Cam Newton this year. And if I'm drafting, I'm sorry, my dog is being rude.
I was going to say, is it your dog or mine? I was like looking, I'm
no.
like, Chewy, Jack, what are you doing?
Normally he's really good, but he
what's
is
his name?
his name is Charlie. I have 2
like
dogs.
he can hear me. What's up,
Yeah.
Charlie?
He can. He's a whisperer too.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
I'm a dog whisperer too, so it's all good. I'm kidding. I'm making stuff up now. Okay.
Okay. So Cam Newton is probably the most concerning quarterback I have right now in this, bottom 5 ranking, specifically for that injury. But you want to break down the numbers a little bit more and tell us, yeah.
Sure. So
I'm
the
gonna
thing
go
is
get my
like
dog. I will be right back.
Go for it. I'll talk.
I can hear you though. Yes, I can still hear
Go
you.
get Charlie. Go get Charlie. So the thing, okay, hi Whisper Nation. I feel so suddenly alone, but yet I'm happy. Anyway, so the thing with Cam Newton that is kind of surprising is like, yeah, his rush yards went down, and yeah, he has this injury. But what I want you to understand about these rankings is that these rankings are based off of assuming these guys are going to be healthy going into 2019. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these rankings. And yeah, he was injured. He has the shoulder. Was it shoulder, right? That's his shoulder issue.
Shoulder.
Okay. There's so many freaking injuries around the NFL. I lose track, and I'm like, I can't remember. However, even though he hasn't been the Cam of old that we have known last year because of the injury, he still had 9 QB1 games in 6-point leagues. I mean, he still balled out. He also, even though he doesn't have like crazy good offensive weapons besides Christian McCaffrey, I understand that, but he doesn't have a stud wide receiver like an Antonio Brown
They just
or
signed
OBJ.
Chris Hogan. They just signed Chris Hogan. What are you talking about?
Excuse me, I'm out.
Always open, okay?
Yeah. You know who else they signed? Rashad Ross from the AAF. What's going on?
If he can get up one play and not act hurt, I will be ecstatic.
He's still going to do the same thing he did in the AAF, and he's going to be like, oh my God, I'm so severely injured, and he's going to come back and score 3 touchdowns. But then he's going to suddenly explode into fantasy relevance and be like, who is this guy? And I'll be like, hey, Fantasy Whispers and Stepmom Laura know all about this. You should have followed us. Anyway, he still had a career-high 320 pass completions. That's insane.
That's really good.
Even though he didn't rush as much as we normally see Cam Newton rush, because he is a beast with his legs. He's a beast of a man. I use that word a lot, beast, but it's a great word. I like it. It's very descriptive. He still rushed 101 times for 488 yards and 4 touchdowns. So the potential is there. If his health is there, especially if they can get some, I don't really want to say better, because, DJ Moore is there. They did lose Funches, but hey, they have Rashad Ross, so I'm just kidding. But even though he doesn't have those kind of offensive weapons, he can still make those completions. He had a career high. He's taking a little bit better care of himself, and his maturity is also grown as we've seen him get older in the league. And that's why he's on this top 10, and that's exactly why he is where he is. And what is so exciting about him is that Cam Newton is going in the 8th round. He's at 8-10. So he's going pretty late in the 8th round, and you can get a potential top 10 quarterback in the 8th round and not have to waste a 1 or 2 round pick for something like that. Again, because depending on your league, those quarterback positions can be a streamable option, but you can have someone like Cam Newton on your team ready and waiting. I don't know, man. That's pretty cool. But when you look at the potential that he has, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you're definitely, if you take Cam, you're hoping that potential is what you're going to get, right? So
sorry, BWS just said I can run faster than him.
Yeah, I want to see it.
I hope you say that as you're running away from him, as you insult him. Because I wouldn't want to be there. Hopefully he's wearing his cape and like a really big hat, so it'll be like drag as he's trying to chase after you.
That would be good. Okay, so the next quarterback that we are going to talk about is also coming off injury, but I really like this quarterback. As Big Travie will tell you, I have a man crush on Mr. Carson Wentz from the Philadelphia Eagles. I know that you don't agree with this one, and I can say that up at 6 in this type of year, I would say I probably wouldn't put him here. However, as we get closer and closer to the season and we see more and more of his back being rehabilitated and him putting in the time and the work, Carson Wentz is so fun to watch. Carson Wentz is behind a very, very good offensive line. You have a running game in Jordan Howard. That's it's there. I do have a soft spot for Jordan Howard this next season. I think that he could.
Doesn't we all love Jordan Howard? Come on.
Yeah, and so you talk about that. Now they went out and got Deshaun Jackson. They have Zach Ertz still, and they still have Alshon Jeffrey. So this offense. and Goddard. So they still have him as well. Yes. So this offense has. In a lot of the sense of the word, has gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
And even if you look at what he did last season, when he played, he was a good quarterback for fantasy and in real life. So for me, I think that I'm banking and I'm hoping between you and I, if my league mates are on here right now, they're gonna know. I plan on targeting Carson Wentz because I know he's going to drop because people are going to be concerned about the injury. But guess what? There's no Nick Foles. They're going to be a little bit less hesitant or more hesitant to pull him out because they don't have a very good backup quarterback. And so I think that the pressure of Nick Foles leaving is going to actually help Carson Wentz because he doesn't have to worry about looking over his shoulder or Philadelphia fans saying, oh, boo, we should have put in Nick Foles. And I think he is going to ball out, maybe not as much as he did a few years ago, but I think that he will, by the time we're talking about this next year, Carson Wentz will be a top 6 quarterback at the end of the year. That's what. My bold prediction.
You know what? I don't think that's that necessarily bold. So when I first listened to the podcast and I need to write an article about it, and I heard that Carson Wentz was at number 6, I'm like, what? It took me totally by surprise. But then as I looked into the numbers, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Right. Makes a lot of sense because he finished last year as QB 23. What on earth makes him okay to be put into not only the top 10, but at number 6?
Right, that's on the cusp of the top 5.
Ahead of someone like Cam Newton, ahead of Russell Wilson, ahead of Drew Brees. Super spicy. Let me get my cayenne pepper and dump it into your eyeballs is kind of what this did to me. But then as I'm looking at the numbers, I did this.
I'm glad you look like you have no residual effect from that. So
no, I don't. I am immune to spice.
There you go.
Totally kidding. I'm very sensitive to it. I'm a delicate lotus blossom, and I can't handle spice. I'm kidding. I love spice. But okay, so the problem with Carson Wentz last year was not his arm. It wasn't his talent. It was his rushing, because that is what we have known him in 2017, according to Fantasy Pros, when he ended up as the QB4, was because he used his legs. So in 2017, he rushed 64 times. Last year, it was 34. That's nearly half is less than what he did. because he was injured, because he had that bad knee injury. They wanted to protect him, and then he goes and hurts his back. So obviously there's a big question mark around him with his stability and his long-term health throughout the entire season. So he's not going to be one of those quarterbacks that you just want to have one quarterback on your entire team. Just to be on the safe side. You can get good quarterback way late to back him up, and you can plug Carson Wentz in when you need to, if you need to stream him, if you're going to do matchup based, and then you can stream other quarterbacks at the position. But when he has his legs going, he can be a crazy threat. And you just brought it up. There's a run game now, and they have Deshaun Jackson back. They have a lot more weapons, and he has more experience. He's more of a veteran presence within this offense, and he doesn't have that Nick Foles looking over his shoulder where it's kind of like, okay, well, whatever. Now he has to really come out and prove himself, not just to the team, but to Philadelphia. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Philadelphia Eagles game. They have a jail in their stadium, according to Michael Strahan. I don't know. I wouldn't want that kind of pressure, but that's what he does. He also did have a career high pass completion percentage at almost 70. It was 69.9. So it's not about his talent. It's about his balance as a quarterback, running and passing the football. And he has both of those. We just need to keep him healthy. And if he stays healthy, he is a incredibly dynamic threat that can really help your team. And you don't have to take him super early and waste that high draft capital.
Yep, I did a mock draft the other day, and he fell like all the way to the 11th round, and I was like,
the one where you started really late in the rounds, because I told you that's where I wanted to draft from. He's like, in a 12-team league, give me 10 to 12, and in an 18 team, give me 8 to 10, because oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, it was mind blowing, because I completely. When I asked you that, I was really it was like that like I just wanted the confirmation bias of like, yes, of course you take either Zeke or Saquon. That's what I was expecting. But you're like, oh no, back end. So I'm like, okay, interesting. So I mock drafted it, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, and I messaged you, I messaged Travis. I was like, yes, the back end is where it's at, and I think that's where I'm going to go. I mean, barring,
I actually might trade my pick this year in my leagues, because we do some of my leagues we have already set. Where we're going to draft from. Some of them, they're random. And you can trade picks if you want to. If I get an early draft pick this year, I am trading for a later draft. Because last year I got 11. Now I wish I had 11 this year.
Right. Yeah, 11 is really, really good. So, all right, we've got a few comments here. And I know the fantasy football show.
Don't worry, he is.
Yes,
Baker is high. Don't worry about it.
So we will get into that right now. And so our number 5 quarterback, it's funny that he made this comment because I was going to bring him up. He's probably the most leading his bandwagon. The fantasy football show has been beating this drum for a while now. He believes Baker Mayfield is going to be this year's Patrick Mahomes. Now, I love Baker Mayfield. I am a huge Baker's fan. I am on Baker Mania from day one.
Me too. I am so on Baker Mania. I am so on Baker Mania. Oh, I apologize for nothing.
And so for me, I like Baker. I like what they did in the offseason in Cleveland. They brought in Kareem Hunt. I don't like the guy, but they brought him in. Fantasy or football player, you got to respect his talent. They brought in OBJ. They have Landry. They have Njoku. They have a good line. They have Chubb. They have so many weapons. Yes. And so for me, it's really hard not to say that this can't happen. But the concern that I have when it comes to Baker Mayfield is not his talent. It's not that offense. It's not anything like that. It's how much do people hype up the Baker Mania to where it becomes to a point where you can't really draft him because he would then have to be at that level and produce at that level in order to return your value, and that's what I'm afraid of. And so I unfortunately don't think I'll have very many shares of Baker Mayfield this year, not because I don't want to. I don't think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be awesome. But my fear is that his ADP will start to rise and maybe possibly jump some of these other guys that we're going to talk about in our top 4, and that's my concern.
And I do agree with you, and I 100% can see that happening. Absolutely. But the thing about Baker, which Baker, but we're besties, Baker and I, first name basis. The thing about Baker Mayfield
he's
is
watching the show.
He's almost kind of like a love him or hate him. So there's very little middle ground with him. So there is an opportunity for him to fall into the draft. And I do completely agree with all of his weapons. I just want to add a little bit onto that too, because according to Pro Football Focus, they have the third best offensive line in the NFL through weeks 1 through 17 of last year. They're unbelievable. So he has the protection, but he also does not have Hugh Jackson. Thank you. So in the first 6 weeks under Hugh Jackson, his pass completion percentage was at 59. It was barely at 60, under 60. And then when Freddie Kitchens came around, who I mentioned this in head coaching changes video that I did a while back, he has that Oklahoma-style offense that Baker Mayfield is so used to playing under. So then after those 8 weeks when Freddie Kitchens took over, his pass completion percent skyrocketed to over 70%. That's not just a few. That's insane. And he has the environment, he has the coaching, he has the weapons, he has the protection to make this happen. And not to mention, he also set a rookie record. For I don't have the notes in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, I believe it's 27. Yeah.
Whatever. So he set this rookie record. And on top of that, too, a name you didn't mention is David Njoku. I love David Njoku as a tight end. The man is an athletic freak. He's like 6'4". He's got the arm span of a California condor. He's insanely good. And they have Todd Monken, who is their offensive coordinator, who used to be the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. And over the last 2 years in Tampa Bay, they were second and third in the league in pass attempts. And I don't know if you guys had any O.J. Howard shares or Cameron Brate shares, but they did pretty well for you in fantasy. And I really think that's going to help David Njoku too. But having all of those options where he can go, the potential for Baker Mayfield is just through the roof, and he has the talent to get it done. We'll see what happens in his sophomore year. But I do have Baker mania. I really do. I really do. I love it. I love it.
You know what's so great about...
And I'm not ashamed.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you. And you know what's so great about these shows is that when we're doing, we dive into numbers all day long, and we love looking at this stuff. But you still, even after doing all that, there are things that you miss. And that little nugget that you just gave about the O.J. Howard, and that was so crucial. That is great. That is a great piece of information because you're so right. O.J. Howard was he was a rock star. If you did not get those top tight ends, O.J. Howard was the next in that next tier.
Cameron Brate, and Cameron Brate had shares in it too. He definitely got fed also.
Yes,
I love fantasy football so much.
Yes, so that is I like that. One thing I do want to say as well before we move on to quarterback number 4. So Baker Mayfield might be a little bit more hyped in our head than it actually is, right? So I agree with all the touchdowns. He was great, all that. But if you take a look at, and give me a second. So from weeks 10 to week 16. So week 6, now they had a bye in week 11. So Atlanta, he finished as QB5. Against Cincinnati, QB5. Houston, QB 18. Carolina, QB 20. Denver, QB 18. And Cincinnati, QB 8. So he is a very good quarterback. He has that potential. He has that ceiling, which you like. And his floor is a little bit lower than some of these other guys, which is why I think his ranking right about 5 is nice, and which is why I don't necessarily think I would pay up if he moves up in ADP because of that.
I totally understand that. And that was something I had to struggle with when I was looking at these numbers because I'm kind of like, Rah. But when you look at it, he was running up against the brick wall that is Hugh Jackson and what he wanted to do. So how much were those numbers skewed? How much were they really not representative of what he can do as a quarterback and what his weapons can do? And now you add more weapons to him, and then you add a coaching staff that can help him. That's why I looked at those last 8 weeks mostly. But you still have to bring in the first 6 weeks to get it. But I think that his floor was low because of the system that he was in.
Yep.
But his upside is huge.
Yes, I think so. And Big Travis just said floor will rise with OBJ. I agree with that. Okay, speaking of really high floor and really, really, really high ceiling, this guy probably had the biggest ceiling of any quarterback that I can remember in the last forever. He is one of Big Travis' favorite players all time until it was replaced by Patrick Mahomes, and that is Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Houston Texans. I do like Deshaun Watson. I think he's very, very fun to watch. He gives you an ability that most quarterbacks don't, and that is that he is very good at running the ball, although he doesn't always run the ball. He has very talented wide receiver, probably the most talented wide receiver in Nuke on the outside. You love that connection. I love the double dip between him and Nuke. You will get Will Fuller back. Now, what I will say is Deshaun Watson is a completely different quarterback when he has Will Fuller on the field. You take a look at, well, last year was really, really spotty because Will Fuller was in and out of the lineup, but you could definitely see him struggle when Will Fuller wasn't in the game, almost to a point that as a fan, I had Nuke on my team, and I almost was like, oh, I almost would rather have Will Fuller because he gives him more attention when he's on the field, unfortunately. But drawing it back in here, with Deshaun Watson, when you look at his weekly consistent rankings, Deshaun Watson had 2 number 1 finishes and 2 number 2 finishes. His lowest finish was QB 22. So you're looking at a guy who his floor is really high, and yet he has the ceiling to hang with the best of them, and Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and guys like that. I like his offensive scheme that he's in, but I do still have concerns about Deshaun Watson and that offensive line. But I don't want to take up all the points. I know you have some really, really good ones. So, Stepmom Lauren, what are your concerns with Deshaun Watson?
I honestly could not agree with you more. And in my opinion, I think that Deshaun Watson is actually one of the more riskier quarterbacks to take. Mm-hmm. Where is his ADP at right now? It's at 603.
Yeah.
And for me
around lower than last year.
Yes. And for me personally, just me personally, that's still a little bit too high. However, let me just refer back to my notes here. He did rush 99 times still. So he does have a very good arm because he had the highest completion percentage for a second-year quarterback in the NFL ever with 68.3%. So you know he can throw the ball. He also rushed 99 times for over 550 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. We all know that he has legs. That's one of his allure in fantasy football is his rushing ability. His sacks are an issue. So he was sacked 62 times. However, I do not put I don't want to say majority. I don't put a lot of those sacks on the offensive line. I put it on him. Yeah. So if you kind of take away this weird year that, maybe that's not even weird. Let's just say learning curve. So if you take this year for him as a learning curve where he's going to try to figure out, okay, how do I be smarter when I run the football to actually get my rushing numbers better, like a QB4 Carson Wentz of 2017 that we all love, like the 2017 Russell Wilson, he has that capability of doing so. It's all there. His accuracy is fantastic. He's got the weapons. It's awesome. And he does have Will Fuller back, which is yet another weapon, and that actually draws coverage away from Hopkins. So now he has even more to go with. The offensive line, I think, does need a little bit of work, but he needs to be smarter running the football. And I think going into next year, with another year of learning under his belt, I think he's going to be a little bit smarter at it as we move forward. That being said, personally, not one of my favorites, but I understand why he is at 4 because the potential for him is the upside is through the roof, and the floor is it's not bad. It's not bad, especially if you're 2 QB leagues or if you're in a league where the quarterbacks are not the highest scorers. He is going to be solid for you, and he's going to be consistent. So it's great.
Exactly. Okay, so we'll go a little bit quicker on these last three guys because it's like everyone knows them and everyone likes them and loves them. So with this number 3 quarterback, some might argue should be number 2. But Aaron Rodgers comes in at number 3. You have the injury concerns. He's had a couple of them now, the collarbone a few years in a row. He had the knee injury last year. Now, I know a lot of people say these are freak injuries, and yes, they are, but you're a quarterback, and you're susceptible to those hits. So
you're getting hit by a freight train.
Yeah. And
you're going to get hurt.
And guess what? Mac, you play him twice a year, and that doesn't change. So,
no.
Yeah. So,
Frank will love that.
Yeah. So, for Aaron Rodgers, do you have any concern with his age, his new offensive coordinator, or that scheme?
No, I have none. Because he's finally going to have a head coach and offensive coordinator that get out of his way. And because literally Aaron Rodgers is going to be the next head coach of
He's like the LeBron.
Packers.
He's like the LeBron of football.
Yeah, I mean, just get out of the man's way. He's a genius. I mean, Brett Favre even went up to LaFleur and was like, tread carefully with Aaron Rodgers. Just be careful, bro. So I get it, and I think he's going to do really well. And actually, I think he's going to exceed his fantasy production that he's done in the past. I know a lot of people that have had him have not been too high on him, and he's third on the fantasy footballers list. I had him when I first looked at it. I kind of thought he was second. But the one that I am mostly excited about within these top 3 is, I mean, obviously Mahomes, but he's going to go at a ridiculous draft price, which is right now is still at $211, which is stupid. But Andrew Luck is at $502.
Yeah.
And Andrew Luck is back. And I am so excited about him. I cannot keep myself contained. This year, he played all 16 games, and he had a career high pass completion percentage of 67.3. He's the second highest touchdown scores at 39 since 2014 when he had 40. So not only is he back, but he's back with a vengeance. And they have an amazing offensive line, and those weapons are unbelievable. And I could not be more happier just when I see that man's face, like his scruffy caveman, like Geico commercial. I'm just like, I love you. You make me so happy.
He is probably one of the best Twitter followers.
He's wonderful.
He tweets out amazing things.
It's so great. Like, not much has changed for him with married life, except now his wife has better health insurance. I mean, come on, dude. You're awesome. I love him. Right? I was really excited about that. But Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck, you can kind of flip-flop back and forth. Where is Aaron Rodgers in his ADP? So Aaron Rodgers is at 505 and Andrew Luck is at 502. That's two elite quarterbacks that you can take in the 5th round as of right now. So unless you're in a keeper league where you have someone like Pat Mahomes and you have really high scoring with your quarterback, come on. There's so much value that can be had here, and I love Andrew Luck.
Yes, I am a huge advocate for Andrew Luck. I really like him. I'm not a huge person when it comes to drafting quarterbacks early.
You're not a huge person. You're very sleek and slender.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'll be here all day.
I will say that Andrew Luck actually kind of makes me think about being a guy that I would change my strategy to get, and I'll tell you why.
I agree.
Because Andrew Luck has never finish outside of the top 5 at quarterback position when he is playing. If he gets injured, that's a different story. But when he is playing, he is on top of his game. And he's only going to continue to get better the further along out of that surgery he gets. And the other exciting thing is the draft. It happens next week, and they are in need of another wide receiver. Can you say, please, oh please, DK Metcalf, go to the Colts? Now, if you get that marriage, you have the outside of DK Metcalf with the speedster of T.Y. Hilton, who, by the way, is an awesome wide receiver, an underrated wide receiver, I think.
Absolutely.
Look out. You have Ebron. You've got Jack Doyle coming back.
Marlon Mack. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And Andrew Luck would be the one guy that I would change my draft style for, because I think he's that good, and I think that he can repeat the success that he had last year. and do it again this year.
I agree. I completely agree because he's going to be steamrolling into this year, and nothing makes me happier to see him stay healthy all last season, and not just stay healthy, crush it. Go back to the QB1, perfect Andrew Luck. He's just like, psh, injury, what injury? I didn't miss any time. I love him. And yes, you're absolutely right. He is one person that I would literally do an entire draft strategy just to get him. And then I would stack his wide receiver, and I would even take Eric Ebron or Jack Doyle as well as a tight end, and I would have no problem having Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, one of his tight ends. Which one? I don't know yet. But I would have no problem with that.
As of right now, I would say Jack Doyle is a sleeper tight end that people aren't talking about. But that's
value for sure.
Show. Yes, that's a different show. So I want to tie in Andrew Luck into our number one. So obviously our number one is Patrick Mahomes. We won't spend too much time on it because I think our hour is coming up here pretty quickly. But something I want to say, all right, and I want to ask you this question, and Whisper Nation, feel free to answer this comment or this question in the comments below, or we will be posting this on YouTube, so please put it in the YouTube.
Thank you, Razzo Smokey. I'm always right. I'm just kidding, but thank you.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that. So here's my question to you. What is more likely? Patrick Mahomes. So everyone wants to talk about Patrick Mahomes. You brought it up earlier, 8.6%,
touchdown rate, 8.6% touchdown rate.
Thank you. So everyone's saying that's got to come down, okay? So the crazy thing is, even if you took 80% of what Patrick Mahomes did last year, he would still end up as the QB1, and he would still outproduce the QB2 by like 30 points, okay? So we just got done talking about Andrew Luck, and how Andrew Luck's a beast. What do you think is more plausible? Andrew Luck had 39 touchdowns last year, I believe, or was it 40? 39 touchdowns. 39 touchdowns. Do you think it's more plausible Andrew Luck gets to 39 or surpasses 39 touchdowns, or do you think that Patrick Mahomes has the ability to throw 45 or more touchdowns next year?
Can I say both? Because I think they're both plausible.
That's cheating.
How is that cheating? I don't have to commit. I have trust issues. Just ask Travi when we talked about trust issues on running backs. No, okay. I think to be totally honest with your question, I think both are possible. Yeah. To answer the question in fairness of what you were asking me, I want to side with Andrew Luck actually surpassing what he did. It's going to be incredibly difficult for Pat Mahomes to repeat what he did, which was 50 touchdowns. And then at 45 or plus, that'd be unbelievable. So whatever, he's amazing. He's going to do well anyway. Yeah. But I think with another year under his belt, with being healthy and getting that chemistry going like he did all last year, I think Andrew Luck has the potential to exceed what he did before.
I couldn't agree more. I think they're only going to get better on that offensive side of the ball.
Agreed.
So there is a really nice competition going on. You are the boss now, Stepmom Lauren. So I hope you're prepared for that.
Oh, excellent. Right. Thank you, guys. Stepmom Lauren can do what she wants. That's right.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So that wraps up today's show. So we got our top 10 quarterbacks. I'm just going to list them off really quick before we sign off. So at number 10, we got Drew Brees. At number 9, we have Russell Wilson. At number 8, Matt Ryan. Number 7, Cam Newton. Number 6, Carson Wentz. Number 5, Baker Mayfield. Number 4 is Deshaun Watson. Number 3 is Aaron Rodgers. Number 2 is Andrew Luck. And number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. Again, these are early quarterback rankings. They could change, and they probably will change as we get closer and closer to the season. But I wanted to say a big thank you to you, Stepmom Lauren, for taking the time to jump on here and talk with us.
Thank you for having me. I love hanging out with y'all.
Oh, you are so fun to hang out with, and Whisper Nation absolutely loves you. Thank you so much, Whisper Nation, for joining on and commenting.
Thank you, Whisper Nation.
And we try to get to as many comments as we possibly can, but sometimes we get a little wrapped up in excitement for certain players, and so we have 27 seconds left. All right, you can get Stepmom Lauren. You can get all of her content on, just search Stepmom Lauren, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. She's awesome. She's also writing for the Fantasy Footballers. She will be writing for us as well. And I'm Johnny Game Time Hicks with the Fantasy Whispers. Until next time, take it easy.
Peace. Love you guys.